Hey everybody, I think we just got started. We'll give it a few more minutes to let more people join.
Okay, should we give it another minute, Jay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Okay, we've got a lot of content to get through today. It's very exciting. Can't wait. Lots of exciting material. We're almost at 150. I think maybe another 30 seconds. Okay. Great. Okay, I think we can get started. That sounds okay. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Joseph Kirkorum here with Jay Menon. We're from the product management team. Today we're going to talk about enterprise security, our flagship product, and the latest 8.0 release. We can quickly introduce ourselves and then get into a lot of exciting and fun material about this release and all its improvements and aspects. So my name is Joseph Kirkorum. I'm a director in the product management team in enterprise security. Jay?
Hey everybody, I'm Jay Menon. I'm also a PM on the ES team and looking forward to going through all this new content and answering your questions today.
Thanks, Jay. And today we're going to go through a couple key areas, case management improvements, detection authoring improvements, SOAR integrations and improvements around that, and then overall how the navigation has changed and how the product's gotten an overall refresh. So before we jump into things, we want to kind of hear from the audience and get some feedback. What are the most exciting things here? Case management, detections, or SOAR? And we'll just wait a few seconds for folks to click some buttons once we get to, some of them. We're still, okay, it's starting to come in now. Okay, I think just a 5, 4, 3, 2, maybe another 2 seconds. Lots of stuff flowing. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So what do we got here? Okay, case management, it's a little less exciting, I guess. Detection authoring, very exciting. SOAR integration, moderately exciting. That's great to hear. Nice distribution. We'll go through each of these and lots of interest. That's great. So if there's any questions, there's the Q&A in the bottom panel here that we'll get to towards the end as well. So just as a quick introduction, Splunk Enterprise Security, it's the flagship product from us from the security products team, and it's built on top of Splunk. There's lots of AI in different places of the product, and then we have other premium products that are out or in development for even more sort of exciting releases. The Splunk UBA product, SOAR, which is sold separately but nicely integrated now, Attack Analyzer, as well as asset and risk intelligence. We're not going to go into any of those in any level of detail other than enterprise security and its 8.0 updates and the SOAR improvements, which are significant as well. So where are these key improvements and what are they? At a high level, in the case management area, there's something called mission control, which is now fully integrated into enterprise security. It used to be a separate product and app, and this is all for triaging and managing and investigating incidents within enterprise security by the SOC team. Lots of bells and whistles and exciting things there. There's standardized and simplified terminology, simplified workflows, so you've got a lot fewer button clicks, a lot fewer sort of tabs and screens to go through. around detections. There's new detection editor types and new types of detections in general that Jay and I will go to in detail, as well as versioning capabilities that are very simple and built directly in the product once you're on this platform, so that any changes and edits you're making around detections are always saved and versioned. And then there's various SOAR improvements, as well as very simple and sleek integration updates for how SOAR playbooks work with enterprise security and mission control, which is all now part of enterprise security. So moving to case management, Jay, do you want to pick it up from here?
Yep, sounds good. Thanks for the intro, Joseph. So we'll start with our first major feature category, which is case management. So now that mission control has been integrated into ES, we offer an entirely new workflow for alert triage and investigation. And so before we dive into that, I just wanted to go through a review of how things worked in ES 7.3 and earlier. So raw Splunk events would feed into our correlation searches, which would then trigger if their logic determined that there might be a threat. And so then if they were triggered, it would generate a notable, which would appear on the main incident review page in enterprise security. And then from there, analysts can manually add notables of concern to pre-8.0 investigations. And then these investigations were then accessible from the investigation workbench for further review by analysts. So now things have changed a little bit in 8.0, so let's take a look at that. So we've renamed correlation searches to detections, specifically event-based detections, and we'll get to the other type of detection later on in this presentation. But event-based detections now output findings instead of notables. So findings replace notables. Findings still appear in the analyst queue. The analyst queue replaces incident review from prior releases. So as we mentioned before, there are going to be some terminology changes in this release. So from there, analysts can triage individual or multiple findings of concern into revamped ES 8.0 investigations, which now appear directly in the queue. So this is instead of appearing in the investigation workbench in 7.3 and earlier releases. So let's just go through what investigations now look like in 8.0, given that they've been revamped. So they offer a much wider range of capabilities than previous releases because they integrate MC incidents with pre-8.0 investigations, which offers access to the MC incident UI, which has become the ES 8.0 investigation UI now. So here, analysts have access to response plans, which are from mission control. And additionally, if they have SOAR paired, they have access to automation capabilities as well. So let's take a look at what the new investigation editor looks like. So as you can see, it builds off of the MC Incident UI, and analysts have access to an overview tab at the top left, as well as a view of the contributing events, Splunk search, response plans, automation if source paired, and threat intelligence. So I'll be playing a demo that goes into a little bit more detail on these capabilities in a few slides. But before we get there, I just want to return back to the workflow to continue fleshing that out. So again, now that we've gone through 8.0 investigations, here's the workflow that we were talking about before. And there's actually another component that's been added in here, which is intermediate findings. So intermediate findings are a new feature in ES 8.0. So now you can basically customize your detection to choose whether you want to output a regular finding or an intermediate finding. And intermediate findings are not meant to appear in the queue, and they can't be triaged, unlike regular findings. So now that we've gone through what findings and investigations are, let's take a quick look at the similarities and differences between them, just so we can get a clear understanding. So findings are generated by detections, while investigations are created manually by analyst triage. So both are located in the queue, but findings can show up individually or underneath an existing investigation or finding group. Investigations will only show up individually in the queue. So findings offer some limited functionalities to respond to a threat, but once triaged into investigations, analysts have access to the entire investigation UI, which includes those response plans and SOAR automation that we were talking about earlier. Findings also offer the ability to add detailed notes and assign your owner, status, disposition, and urgency, just like notables did before. And investigations also include these abilities, but they also offer access to search and enrichment via threat intelligence. So now that we've gone through the key components of what appears in the analyst queue, I'm just going to be playing a pre-recorded video that goes through a demonstration of the sort of features and capabilities of the redesigned analyst queue in ES 8.0. Okay, so this is going to be a demonstration of the analyst queue in Enterprise Security 8.0. We can access this page by clicking on the mission control button at the top left of the screen. And as we can see here, we have all the findings and investigations over the last 24 hours, which is the only filter currently applied. If we want to filter the queue down more, we can use the search bar. And I'm just going to enter in threat object here and click apply. And now we're going to filter the queue for findings and investigations that contain the text threat object within them. This filter is also added at the top here so we can keep track of it. Now, if we want to remove all filters, we can click clear all to return us to our start state. And there you go. You have all the findings and investigations show up again. There are a bunch of other things that we can do to customize our queue as well. The first being sorting columns. So for example, we can click on the time column, which changes the sort direction to show oldest findings and investigations first. For the urgency column, we can sort informational to critical instead, which changes the sort direction again. Additionally, we can also filter on columns other than the title column by clicking on them, which shows this pop-up. And for example, I'm going to enter unknown here, click enter, and click apply. As we can see, the filter is now showing up at the top of the page, and we only have findings and investigations where the entity is unknown. Now again, we can click clear all to return to our starting state. And for column headers that have labels, we can click on them and select the label with the checkbox. So let's say we want investigations only. We can click on that. Again, this shows up at the top as a filter. Then we click apply. The queue now updates. Now we only have investigations. We can also save this view by clicking on save. And I'm going to name this investigations only. And here we have all the filters that are applied and all the columns that are included. I'm just going to set it as default and then click save. And now we can see it show up at the save view header here. We can click on the dropdown and click on manage save views to either edit or delete the views that we have. So I'm just going to delete this one, click close. And now we're out of that saved view. And to update the queue, we just click apply. And again, we're returned to our start state with all the findings and investigations over the last 24 hours. Okay, awesome. So hopefully that was helpful at getting an idea of what the analyst queue, which replaces incident review, looks like in ES 8.0. So now that we have that context, I'm going to go through another demo which explains what the new investigation triage workflow looks like, as well as going through the investigation editor UI. This is going to be a walkthrough of the investigation workflow in Splunk ES 8.0. So I'm actually going to start with an instance of ES 7.3 and go through the investigation workflow there so we can get a direct side-by-side comparison with the 8.0 workflow, and so we can really see the improvements and benefits that we've added. All right, so in 7.3, if you wanted to triage a notable event directly into an investigation, what you would do is click the checkbox next to the notable, and then click Add Selected to Investigation, click Create Investigation, enter a title, then click Start Investigation. And then it takes you to the investigation workbench. So as you can see, this is a pretty long and complicated process, which involves a lot of clicks. And we've drastically simplified this in 8.0. So to directly triage a finding into an investigation from 8.0, you would click on it, and it opens up this side panel, and then we can directly click Start Investigation, and it takes you to the investigation editor. So as you can see, this is a drastically simplified process. Now let's return to the queue. And now I'm going to demonstrate the process of adding multiple findings to an investigation, or multiple notables to investigation in the case of 7.3. So I'm going to go back here too. So the workflow for this is actually pretty similar, but it's still worthwhile going through it. So if you want to checkbox whatever you want to add to the investigation, then you click Add Selected to Investigation. You select an existing investigation, and then click Save. Then you can open the sample investigation. Pretty similar process in 8.0, so you would select whatever you wanted, click Add to Investigation, either create a new one or add to an existing investigation, and then click Save. There you go. So a relatively similar workflow if you want to triage multiple findings into investigation or add them. Now, another big change is that investigations show up in the analyst queue directly. Versus in 7.3, we actually have to click into an entirely new page, the investigations page, to access our investigations. So this makes things a lot more streamlined in 8.0. So lastly, what I'm going to do is go through the features that are actually available for investigations in 8.0. So you want to click on the investigation in the queue and then click View Details, which is going to take you back into the editor. Here you go. We have an overview of this specific investigation. It shows us some additional fields, events associated with it, the adaptive response invoked. And one of the new features in here is response plans, which comes directly from MC. So for those of you who are not familiar with mission control, basically it gives you templates of response actions to perform in order to remediate the possible threat posed by the investigation you're looking at. So we can click Add Response here to select a response plan. So I'm just going to pick this one. And there you go. It shows you a list of steps on what you need to do to remediate this specific problem using this response plan. And we can click Start, then click End to basically just go through these steps. Additionally, we can also see the events associated with the investigation. Right now, none are added, but you can use search or automation in order to do that. And then there's a search tab, which just gives us access to classic Splunk search directly from within an investigation. And then there's an automation tab, which if you have SOAR paired with ES 8.0, you can directly run playbooks on these specific investigations. So we would click Run Playbook here. We select the playbooks that we have, click Run Playbook, and it would perform the automated actions that have been set from SOAR. And you can directly go into SOAR and view this playbook by clicking Open Playbook, and it will redirect you into Splunk SOAR, where you can edit the playbook that you've created. So there you go. That's a demonstration of what the new investigation feature looks like in ES 8.0. I hope that was helpful. Okay, awesome. So I hope that helped give you guys a quick breakdown of what investigations look like in 8.0. And I think that's a good look at what case management looks like in general. So we got a poll question here on case management investigations. Which component are you guys the most excited about? So give it some time for people to select answers. Okay. I see it coming in a little bit. Give it another 30 seconds or so. Okay. I think we got enough responses, so just gonna. Okay, cool. So looks like access to response lengths and stored and the simplified triage process look popular. So that's awesome to hear. Um, and I guess we can move on to our next major feature category, which is detection authoring. So basically, the main thing going on here is now that we have event-based detections replacing correlation searches, we've also replaced the correlation search editor with all new detection editors that have advanced new capabilities in a UI and include version control as well. So let's just do a quick review of what event-based detections are. So as I mentioned before, event-based detections receive Splunk events as inputs and will generate findings if triggered. An analyst can choose whether they output a regular finding or an intermediate finding, but they cannot do both at the same time. So this is a quick look at what the redesigned event-based detection editor looks like. So you can access this editor from content management, and it offers a number of configurable inputs and outputs, which we will go into a little bit more detail later in a demo video. And now let's move on to the new type of detection that we have in ES 8.0, which is the finding-based detection, which is currently in preview. And I just wanted to go through really quick on what the workflow for this looks like, so how it works. So finding-based detections take findings and intermediate findings as inputs, and they're intended to replace risk incident rules. So if the logic in a finding-based detection indicates a possible threat based on the inputted findings and intermediate findings, it will output a finding group that contains those findings and intermediate findings that triggered the logic. So just like a regular finding, a finding group can then be triaged by an analyst into an investigation, and it also shows up in the queue. You can expand it and see all the findings that are inside of it. So now that we have that general context, I'm going to hand it back to Joseph to go into more detail about finding-based detections and versioning.
Thank you, Jay. So yeah, thank you for introducing this exciting new feature. Finding-based detections, we have released it with ES 8.0. However, it is labeled as a preview feature. That's a, kind of a, I'd say, a moderate distinction in that it's a fully sort of supported feature within the product. But because it's new and we didn't get to do as much testing as we would have liked to earlier in the year with customers in our preview stages, we're previewing it now. Now, the changes with finding-based detections in 8.0 and what are the new things? The net of it is that finding-based detections are designed to replace risk incident rules, and they are sort of available in the product. What I mean is risk incident rules as they have existed in prior versions of ES 8 are not going away. They're continuing to be in the product, continuing to be supported alongside these new finding-based detections. So finding-based detections and have a number of different sort of templates that are in the product that you can start to build from. There's also finding-based detection based risk incident rules that ship with ES 8.0 as well, but they're not necessarily they're not turned on by default. So they're there for customers to use and test and try out. And once they're comfortable, they can migrate from the older risk incident rules to these new, more modern finding-based detections. And I'll show how these look and work in a moment. Essentially, what we see here is they're intended to help with grouping of similar findings that are coming from the event-based detections. But much more than that. So they can group based on various thresholds, various group types. They can be thresholds that are related to the MITRE attack categories, tactics, and techniques. They can be related to thresholds associated with risk objects or entities, as we call them now. So if there's a minimum risk level, that is how it's intended to replace risk incident rules going forward. And here you can also see it searches on intermediate findings as well as findings. So you can pick either or both and aggregate the risk across both of them if you like. With choosing just intermediate findings, it's basically the direction of having this grouping and thresholding technology work as a sort of an easier way to manage risk. Now, another thing you might notice on the screen is like, hey, where do I enter the SPL? Well, that's actually one of the big benefits here is there's no need to know SPL in order to implement these. It's a simple sort of a GUI based. You still have that option in the custom FBD here, but that is simply just an option. But you can create various sort of grouping types of these here that you see on the screen, with just a few clicks. So there's entity-based, which are assets or identities. And if there's common entities, those would get grouped together automatically. Similarly, threat objects and threat actors would get grouped together automatically. Cumulative entity risk, which is similar to entity, but now you could set a threshold based on risk level that aggregates for an entity. And if it increases past a certain risk, then the grouping begins and it continues to group all the ongoing sort of finding and intermediate findings into that finding group. Kill chain based criteria, MITRE attack based criteria, and thresholds, as well as similar findings. This is where you can handpick a few or many common detections and group them into a single sort of set of groups or group that help you sort of keep track of things that are similar to each other and you prefer to or find it more efficient to triage them together versus separately. So now moving on to detection versioning, this is something that is supported for both event-based and finding-based detections. And essentially once you turn on or upgrade to 8.0, you have this feature available, and any and all changes that you make to detections are saved as new versions in the product, which makes it very easy and simple to kind of keep track of the changes over time. And another benefit is also when there's content updates that come from our research team through the ESCU sort of a content update pipeline. Those also come with their own versions going forward as well. So when we release a new version and you've customized it and we release another version, those are 3 different versions in the product, if you will. That makes it easy to keep track of and not worry about overriding things that might be customized. You can roll back or use any older version and have an older version that you continue to use even if you make updates to it, or if we've issued an update until you're ready to use a newer version. You don't have to use it right away too. Relationships between versions as well as between clone detections are also tracked in the product and very easy to navigate. Change history, that supports kind of basic auditing review of who made which changes when, with version notes also attached to every version that's saved, is also in the product. And now we'll jump to a demo video of how this works.
All right, this is going to be a walkthrough of detection authoring in ES 8.0. You can write detections from the same place that you write correlation searches in ES 7.3, which is the content management page. Except when you click on create new content, you're offered the choice of a detection rather than a correlation search. So let's click that, and now we're given a modal that allows us to choose between an event-based detection and a finding-based detection. Let's start with an EBD. After that, we click submit, and it takes us to the detection editor. Now we're given the option to choose between an intermediate finding and a regular finding. As a reminder, intermediate findings don't appear in the analyst queue unless they're grouped by a finding-based detection. There's a bunch of other fields that you can fill out, like risk, annotations, time range, etc. Now let's return to content management so we can take a look at what a finding-based detection looks like. Again, we're going to click create new content, detection, and then now we're going to select finding-based detection. Click submit. And now the first thing we're prompted with is the type of finding group you want to generate. And there's a bunch of preset options that contain different mechanisms for grouping together findings. You can also create your own grouping mechanism by writing your own SPL by clicking the custom button. All right, now let's return back to content management so we can take a look at the last feature I wanted to cover, which is versioning. All right, so let's click on this event-based detection and open it. And as you can see, we're on the latest version, which is not the original out-of-the-box detection created by Splunk. You can switch over to that, And then you can add any changes that you want into the detection and then save it as a new version or clone it.
Great. Thank you, Jay, for narrating that video. Very nice. So now another quick poll. What are you most excited about from what you've seen so far? Finding-based detections, versioning, or just the kind of UI changes for the detection editors? And we'll take just a few seconds here to get some feedback. Let's see. Nice. Feedback's coming more quickly now. I guess people are warmed up. Very good. I think just 2 more seconds here, and then let's see what we got. So, finding-based detections, very exciting. Yeah, that's a net new feature, and I'm very excited about it personally as well. Versioning also seems pretty popular. New UI, maybe not so much. Okay, just a UI, right? But we're hoping that things are going to make it easier and simpler to edit there with that UI. Great. Very exciting to see finding-based detections so popular. So next thing we're going to talk about, folks, is our SOAR integration and how it's kind of changed and improved with the 8.0 release here. So before 8.0, and I think you're seeing a little bit of a theme here by now. There was a bit of a kind of process and forwarding notable events to SOAR. There was also translation from Common Information Model to CEF, or Common Event Framework, right? There's quite a few clicks to get and run and use a playbook. Pivoting between consoles, just APIs and connectivity between ES and SOAR was a little bit sort of limiting. So now with 8.0, you essentially pair your 2 different stacks, right? It only takes 1.5 minutes, literally. There's a new ES type playbook that understands ES data natively. There's no translation needed. There's automation views right in the investigation. And you can also run multiple playbooks, and analysts can trigger them, or they can run automatically if they're mapped to a detection. So let's jump into the details. So the new playbook development, this is a new type of playbook when you go to create a playbook on the SOAR, in the SOAR product. And the beauty of it is that this one natively integrates with ES. So all the sort of bells and whistles, the fields, the connectivity within, and whatever an analyst really can do that is using ES within the UI also that Jay's demonstrated to you here. All of that can be done through automation through an ES type playbook. So there's those new paths and connectivity into all the little details there. Now that's done through a new ES connector, which here you can see in sort of a sample of different things that the ES connector can do. It clicks in and can add tasks, get information, get information from the finding, from the investigation, add notes, add response plans, and so on and so forth. So there's lots of flexibility, but it's also very easy and simple because it's speaking ES language, right? Now we're going to jump into a video that shows how this works, and this one here, as you can see, we're creating a new playbook using the ES playbook type, and now we're getting system information from a finding from ES, and that I'm going to follow along on the screen so everyone understands what's going on. So you're essentially getting some information from the destination, could be the IP address or something else that identifies that destination. And then we're going to set up some queries to the endpoint security, in this case, CrowdStrike, automation API to pull back the operating system and, and also the type. So, the traditional sort of a SOAR playbook editor UI through these steps. And then once those things are identified and added to the playbook, you can see the second one is being added also. That content is going to go back and be added as a note back down to the finding or investigation when this playbook triggers. So. And we're almost done with it here. Now we can see how it works. We're saving the playbook. Now we go into the mission control UI, looking at an investigation. We can run that playbook and boom, it's run. And this is then available to the analyst that's working on it through this UI. Here you can see it ran and it returned Windows Server 2016 server type. Hope that was helpful, pretty comprehensive video. The next thing I want to review is automation rules. So now that we have playbooks, we have, the API, things are simple. We can create lots of playbooks for ES. This is another enhancement within ES that enables kind of easy association between all your detections and all your playbooks. So if you have, if you have playbooks that you want to reuse across many detections, instead of going into each and every detection and configuring it, you create this kind of mapping glue between detections and playbooks to kind of centrally manage which ones are used by what. So it's an N by M kind of a mapping, and you can have a number of these different rule mappings as well. So that gives you even more flexibility to, I'd say pick and choose and organize these things in a simple way that's also simple and easier to manage, right? And the next and almost last thing around SOAR is like, okay, so how does this pairing magic work? So the self-service pairing, it's really very quick. You just, in fact, need to know your credentials to log into SOAR. And once you log into your SOAR stack, those credentials get used to create a sort of a persistent, persistent internal account credential that is mapped to a group type. And we can, kind of go through a video that shows how that works also as I explain it. And this, then kind of makes it easy to give your analysts access to those automations that they, can run from the UI, as well as a single sign-on for administrators, right? So here we can see it's connecting to the source stack. It's now you need to pick an ES platform role and map it to the administrator. Only the administrator one is required at first. You have flexibility to create other sort of mappings between the ES role and the SOAR role, but only administrator is required so that it actually runs and persists that connection. And then users that have that role from the ES side can also SSO to the SOAR stack and do work there as well without having to worry about separate logins and stuff like that. So you see you have that flexibility that enables the playbooks to be used within and mapped with automation rules and used by the analysts, and all their results to be showing up where you've set them to show up. Now, so another quick survey. What do you here most interested in? The automations and investigations, or the ES specific playbooks, or the automation rules framework? Which one would be most sort of helpful, do you think, in how you'd be using this? Okay, a few more seconds. We've got lots of feedback already. All right, let's call it here. And oh, looks like a decent distribution, mostly the automation and investigation. So it sounds like having that automation and giving the SOC analysts more freedom to leverage it and use it is going to be pretty helpful there. Awesome. Now moving on, kind of a wrap up around these improvements within case management. We've seen the mission control integration and how fewer clicks and easier it is to work with the analyst queue, and also get these, the quick access to all the configurable components and investigation tools that are available once you start investigation directly in the same UI. Detection authoring has new editor types, as well as the version control. and the SOAR integration, which I'm also even more excited about after talking about it here and seeing how that can help your SOC analysts be more productive and get more done, keep your organization more secure. So back to you, Jay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Joseph. So now that we've covered all these major features in ES 8.0, I wanted to discuss some of the terminology and navigation changes that have been made as a result. So with the direct integration of mission control, this release of ES seeks to standardize terminology across the products. So that would be MC, ES, and SOAR. And by implementing these changes, we ensure that our terminology now complies with OCSF and reduces analyst confusion, and overall work towards our goal of creating a seamless integrated case management experience. So now just a quick rundown of some of these taxonomy changes in 8.0. So we've already discussed several of these, but they're cataloged here as well for your convenience. Some of the major changes are that correlation searches rules and risk rules are now event-based detections. Risk incident rules are finding-based detections, although we still have them in the product. And then notables and risk notables are findings, comments are notes, and MC incidents and ES investigations have been combined into revamped 8.0 investigations. And then incident review is now renamed the analyst queue. And then here is a continued list of some of the terminology changes in 8.0. And now let's move on to changes in navigation. So as you can see in ES 7.3, we had a really heavily crowded navigation bar that had 11 tabs. In 8.0, we've simplified this down to just 5. And so all the pages, most of the pages have remained the same. They've just been moved around to simplify things. So now I'm going to play a quick walkthrough of what the navigation looks like in 8.0. Okay, in this video, I'm going to be walking through all the navigation changes made from ES 7.3 to ES 8.0. So as you can see in the 7.3 instance, there are a bunch of these tabs at the top of the navigation, and it's really been simplified down to just 5 tabs at the top here. And a lot of the same pages have just been migrated onto new tabs, sort of simplified, or some have been merged together. And so I'm just going to walk through what those changes are, but pretty much everything has remained the same. There's just in different locations now. So first off, the security posture tab has 3 dashboards in it: security posture, executive summary, and SOC operations. That's been moved to the analytics tab here. So these 3 dashboards are accessible from the top. Incident review, as we discussed before, has been changed into mission control, and it's been moved over as the first page accessible from the navigation. Next, the investigations page has been removed because investigations have been migrated to the mission control queue, which is, again, the first tab on the navigation. Next, the security intelligence, security domains, cloud security, and audit tabs have all been migrated as sub-tabs under the analytics tab. So they're all right here. And the same dashboards are available if you sort of click into each of these that were available from here. Next, the search dropdown has been removed, and the dashboards and reports pages have been moved under analytics as well. And the third page, which is datasets, is now accessible from the configure tab. Next, we have the configure tab itself. So this has remained largely the same, but a lot of these sort of sub-tabs here that you can click into have just been migrated into the all configurations page. So if we click into that, we can see you get all these details which are accessible from here. And then we have the Splunk search tab, which is the exact same. And then we have the page for content management. This has been moved over to the new security content tab. So there's content management, and then we have the security use case library and the risk factor pages, which have been pulled out of the configure tab from 7.3. The detections page is basically just the content management page filtered down to detections. And we have new pages for response plans and SOAR playbooks, given the integration of MC and SOAR. So as you can see, pretty much nothing has really changed. They've just been moved to different locations or merged together. And hopefully this helps get you started on the new navigation setup for 8.0. Okay, awesome. So hopefully that was helpful in introducing you guys to the new navigation setup. So the very last thing that I'm going to go through are some caveats and deprecations. So that's the things that have been removed in ES 8.0, which are important to pay attention to if you want to upgrade. So first off, unlike in 7.3, when you click on findings and investigations in the analyst queue, there's no longer row expansion. So the row will no longer open up on the bottom, but instead you'll have a side panel which pops up on the right. The next thing is that the investigation bar, dashboard, and workbench have all been removed and replaced by the MC incident UI, which is used for ES 8.0 investigations. So if you're using MC, all data from MC incidents will be automatically migrated into 8.0. However, and this is important to note, investigation data from ES 7.3 and earlier. So if you're using the investigations feature in 7.3 or earlier, any data in there will not be migrated into ES 8.0 investigations, right? But that's not the case for ES 7.3 notables, right? Those, if you're using just like normal notables and correlation searches in 7.3, those will be automatically converted into detections and findings, but not investigation data. So just to be clear on that, a couple other deprecations, sequence templates are not available in 8.0. If you're using mission control, SLAs and role-based incident type filtering are also not available in 8.0. There's no accompanying PCI release for ES 8.0. And lastly, the checkbox feature that was available on ES 7.3 and earlier releases no longer is able to select all across all pages in the queue. So before you could click that checkbox at the top of the page and it would select all the notables in incident review. Now, when you do that, it will only select the findings and investigations that are on the current page when you do select all. And we've gotten like some feedback from customers that they want that feature available again. So that's in the works for an upcoming release to allow you to select everything in the queue again. So yeah, that's pretty much it for us. Thank you so much for attending this, and hopefully this was helpful and gave you some useful information on this release. And now we'll open it up to Q&A. I know we've gotten a lot of questions in the chat, so I answered a couple, but there are some that I wanted to highlight. Just repeat some of the answers in case that you guys didn't get it. So one question that I saw in the chat was basically like, you have event-based detections that generate findings, and findings also serve as inputs into detections. Isn't that kind of like circular logic? So I just wanted to clarify that. So essentially, your event-based detections, which replace correlation searches, those are going to take in raw Splunk events, and they'll output findings. Finding-based detections will take findings as inputs and then output finding groups, which can then be triaged into investigations. So those are two separate types of detections, right? Finding-based detections will not take events as inputs, and event-based detections will not take findings as inputs. So the inputs and outputs differ on those two. Yeah, so that was an important one that I saw. I'm trying to look through some of the others. Yeah, there was a question on if you already have correlation searches and notables configured in 7.3 and earlier, what's going to happen in 8.0? Again, like I mentioned on the previous slide, any correlation searches and notables that have been configured will automatically be converted into event-based detections and findings. So that will be handled for you.
Yeah, I think even just to comment a little more on that one, Jay, in general, the how and risk events or notables are stored inside this, on the index, it doesn't change. So anything that's been customized on top of this before this release will not break. And if it breaks, there's always some bugs with software, but if there's issues, our support team is here to help. But in general, the backwards compatibility is a big sort of a requirement in principle, and we've done tons of testing internally to make sure that things are continuing to not be interrupted.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, just echoing what Joseph said, backwards compatibility is very important to us. So
yeah. I see a few other questions around like licensing, maybe just to mention. In general, with this release, licensing is not changing. So the way your enterprise security licenses worked before continue to work that way. with SOAR. SOAR has its own licensing, which also continues to work that way with this release. And if you have analysts that you want them to access and use the SOAR playbooks within the investigations, there's those essentially need to be added as seats to the SOAR system, I believe. But I would recommend for licensing questions just to reach out to your sales reps, your account teams, to get exact clarifications as to how that works for you.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else that's sticking out to me.
When the release timelines, few questions around like when is it available for cloud, when is it available for on-prem. So the cloud build and deployments have already begun at the end of October. I think it was the day before Halloween. It went GA for cloud deployments, and we've already had quite a few sort of cloud deployments that have completed their upgrades that are continuing. If you want your cloud stack to be upgraded, I'd recommend kind of reaching to your counter support teams, and then those can be scheduled for you. On-prem is planned to be GA by the end of this month, November, which essentially means that it'll be available for anyone to download from Splunk Base. So some questions around training videos and classes. I think there's a number of links in another slide here in this deck, actually the very next slide. I'll just preview that. There's lots of resources that are already available and more training that will be available. Some of that is still kind of being finalized, but the training and enablement teams here behind the scene. But rest assured, there will be tons of that available.
I saw one question about if there's like a guide to the taxonomy and terminology changes between 7.3 and 8.0, and I believe in the documentation there should be like a one-to-one table that breaks all of that down, sort of like we just had in the slide there, so that can help. Yeah, I see a couple questions on that. Yeah, so yeah, the naming conventions will be in documentation.
So there's a question, risk score can still be added to an entity as an alert action and correlation search. So the way risk scoring, kind of works, let me comment on this a little bit, with 8.0 is there's a few changes. The editor is designed in a way now to make it sort of intuitive and easy to guide, the editor, like the detection editor or engineer, security engineer, to decide, right? So when you're working on a detection, you need to decide a few things that is a little bit different with 8.0. One is you need to decide whether the output is going to be an intermediate finding or finding. And in general, we recommend intermediate findings if you don't know that you exactly want it to go to the SOC, because an intermediate finding is designed to capture risk and not sort of go directly to the SOC analyst right away, whereas a finding goes directly to the analyst queue for SOC analysts to look at, right? And then just like RBA alerting is designed, right? However, the change here is that you have to decide whether you want the detection to create a finding or an intermediate finding. It can't be both, it can't be neither, right? That's a key difference. Another sort of key difference is you have to identify at least one entity, so user or kind of asset, or to attribute risk to, and you need to decide how much risk to attribute to that entity. directly in the configuration of these detections, right? That's another sort of shift, and we're basically saying, risk is so important that now, any and all detections should sort of capture some amount of risk because it's so, good and important to kind of think and work along those lines. So I hope that kind of helps clarify some of those things. So there's a question around detection authoring here. So the key thing, I think, with the detection authoring and how it, I think I tried to mention this when I was talking about it earlier with the Splunk threat research team's content that gets updated roughly every 2 weeks. And that's all sort of visible on research.splunk.com also, which has recently gotten a big upgrade too. So I'd recommend folks to go to that site and see, what new and exciting things are there. But the ESCU app is still kind of required to actually consume and bring the content down to the ES stack. Once that content is there, it is available for ES to configure and use, right? The big improvement here with the 8.0 release is that nothing gets overwritten. Customizations don't get lost if you haven't sort of cloned something before. Everything is versioned. So there's versions that come from our research team, and then there's customized versions that you can manage and configure on your own. And those coexist and are basically a chronological list in the product. We have 2 minutes left, Jay, technically. Any last questions that we should touch on? I've been scanning through. Yes, also mission control and threat intelligence functionality is definitely present. However, you have been using that before, should be available there. The UI has a specific threat intelligence tab under investigations. Yeah, and who made a change? Yes, there is a author or user, I think it's author, field now, and there's a few fields there that are automatically captured. So depending on what, let's say, Jay is logged in. If his ID is JAY, then JAY will be captured as the author who made a particular change. If the change came from the Splunk research team, the author would be Splunk. So that's an easy way to identify who those changes are. So what's captured is when exactly the change was made, who made it, and what and a version note, and I forget maybe one other thing. And this is an area that we're actively working on to enhance as well, to add more capabilities and features into. As product managers, we're always thinking about the future, right, Jay? So, so that's, something we're, excited to talk about. With finding-based detections also, just sort of a last comment and kind of a call out or call to action, perhaps, if, as and when folks start to use that feature, it is still in preview, so it'll get limited support from our support team. Instead, if you have feedback, questions, issues that you're experiencing, or bugs, potentially there will be a voice of the customer portal or VOC portal where there's like a long list of FAQs and other support, as well as a feedback kind of a form and button that enables you to provide the feedback on what your question or issue or concern might be around FBD, and that comes directly to the product management team. So we'll be supporting that feature and interacting directly with you, the customer, to kind of understand exactly, how you're using it, what you think, what can we improve, and what do we need to fix. So, I think we're a little bit past time now. Should we just highlight the additional resources? So there's a link here of additional resources, lots of more information around 8.0, videos, things to watch, write-ups from Gartner and stuff like that. We also have community.splunk.com, where Jay and I actually just did an office hours last week around this stuff, and there's always events going on there where you can join and engage and continue speaking with us. And we don't have a slide for it, but I always like to mention ideas.splunk.com, which is something we spend a lot of time in as product managers, listening to our customers and seeing what they suggest or what they need as a, sort of a great way to get, sort of to catch our ears, so to say. So with that, I think we're done for today. We're 2 minutes over. Okay, I guess that is all. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you guys coming. Hope that was helpful.
Bye-bye.